Law is supposed to be about justice. But too often, it ends up costing the lawyers inside it their health, their families, and their joy. That's why I created this podcast. Welcome to the Lawyer Burnout Solution, the podcast for women attorneys who want to move from survival mode to a sustainable, fulfilling career. I'm Heather Mills, a former class action litigator turned coach, and each week I share tools and strategies to help you reclaim your energy, confidence, and career. This week, I want to step back and share my story, why I'm doing this podcast, why this matters to me as a lawyer talking to other lawyers, and why I believe so strongly that things can be different for you and for the culture of law itself. So here's where I want to start. I believe that law is a noble profession. Despite all the lawyer jokes, most of us went into it because we wanted to serve, to protect rights, to make a difference. Law is supposed to be about justice. And I know it doesn't always feel that way, especially now. But it's about helping people in their hardest moments, about upholding systems that matter. But somewhere along the way, the profession stopped supporting the people inside it. Lawyers became the expendable resource. The hours and the work somehow became more important than the attorney's humanity. But I believe it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to keep living in survival mode just because that's what the culture of law has normalized. Women lawyers can practice differently. You can define success in ways that don't cost your health, your family, or your joy. And when women lawyers start making those shifts, even in really small ways, it doesn't just change individual lives. It shifts the profession itself. It lets the next generation of women attorneys know that it's possible to practice law in a way that doesn't burn them out. So that's why I started this podcast, to have honest conversation about what it's like to practice law, to name the invisible pressures, to share the tools that help you shift from surviving to something sustainable. When I started practicing law, I was all in. I was a plaintiff side litigator, class action litigator, and I could probably outwork just about anyone. On the outside, probably looked like everything was going just fine. I seemed smart, driven, and successful. But here's the truth I didn't say out loud at the time. I was constantly second-guessing and criticizing myself. Was I prepared enough? Did I miss something? Was someone else smarter, faster, better? Of course they were. And that put my brain and my body into the stress cycle. Back then, I just believed that being that kind of lawyer that most of us are in, the high stakes, the high pressure, always on, that wasn't compatible with being the kind of mom I wanted to be. Eventually, I wasn't that back then. So when I finally decided to leave law, that belief was front and center. But that wasn't the only reason. It was also the exhaustion, that bone-deep tiredness that doesn't go away with sleep. It was the cynicism. It was how ineffective I felt, the fear of not actually changing anything the way I'd hoped I would, the lack of joy and inability to have fun anymore, which my partner at the time definitely noticed. I no longer liked who I was. My idealism and my empathy felt worn down, honestly almost gone. And I wanted that back. I didn't believe I could keep going like that for another 30 years. Now, I don't actually believe that being a mom and a lawyer are inherently incompatible. That was my social conditioning talking. I've seen incredible women who are both brilliant lawyers and wonderful mothers. But at the time, all of those things together, the exhaustion, the cynicism, the loss of who I wanted to be, made my decision clear. By the time I did have kids, I was already coaching. So I don't know what it's like to be lawyering all day and then rushing home for dinner or for bedtime. but I do know what it's like to try to be everything to everyone, to hold a career and a family and the logistics of the daily life in one brain that never rests. And here's the part I want to highlight for you. I thought I was the only one struggling as a lawyer. Looking back, I know that wasn't true. I wasn't alone. So many women lawyers are quietly carrying a very similar burden. And I tried all the fixes back then, the ones that lawyers are trained to try: work harder, plan more, push through, be more self-disciplined. But none of that helped. I didn't feel better. What I didn't understand back then was that the problem wasn't just the external things that I thought they were. It wasn't just the workload, the deadlines, my boss. It was my reaction to all of that. It was the invisible mental battle inside of me, the self-doubt, the perfectionism, the self-criticism, the fear if I ever let up that I'd fall behind. Realizing that the stress wasn't just coming from the outside. Honestly, it really did change everything for me. Seeing that my own thinking from the way I'd been conditioned as a lawyer and as a woman was fueling the stress, that changed everything. So here's what I eventually figured out. It wasn't just me. Yeah, back then I thought the problem was that I was weak or lazy or not cut out for law, but none of that was true. It was that I'd been trained into a system that rewarded me for overriding my own limits. Law school, billable culture, client demands, they all teach lawyers that the only acceptable answer is yes, I've got that. Yes, I'll handle it. And as women, we get another layer of conditioning on top of that. We're told that our worth is in serving others and sacrificing ourselves for others. At work, that means being someone who's always reliable, never dropping the ball. At home, that means carrying the invisible second shift, the logistics, the remembering, the emotional labor that we hear about all the time now, right? And then feeling guilty if we miss a beat. So when you put those two forces together, legal culture on one side, gender conditioning on the other, it creates a perfect storm. You're praised for overfunctioning. You're penalized if you slow down, or at least it feels that way. And pretty soon, you start to believe that running yourself ragged, sacrificing your body and your health is just the normal way to practice law. And here's what we don't realize, is that burnout isn't just a lot of stress. It's what happens when your nervous system has been stuck in overdrive for too long. And it's not just the deadlines or the billables. For many lawyers right now, there's also the weight of larger systems and headlines that feel immovable. That sense of fighting uphill day after day adds another layer to the exhaustion. You can still be hitting deadlines and showing up for settlement negotiations and client meetings and secretly be completely depleted inside. That's why so many women lawyers tell me, I don't even know if this is burnout or just me. It's not just you. It's the system. And it's the conditioning we've all absorbed. Yet every time you choose a different way, you chip away at that conditioning. This isn't just about surviving your own career. Each decision to protect your energy, to set a boundary or rest without guilt becomes part of a larger shift in the culture of law. For me, the turning point was realizing that I couldn't keep fixing this with the same strategies that got me into it. Law had trained me to push harder, be more disciplined, do more. And every time I doubled down on that approach, I just got more efficient at burning myself out. Even after I had become a coach, I still didn't recognize those patterns. It took a while. I know. What actually changed everything was learning how to look at what was happening inside me the thoughts, the emotions, the old patterns I'd picked up without even realizing it. That's where this type of coaching came in. I discovered tools that finally made sense of why I felt stuck and how to actually shift it. And those tools are what I now teach to other women lawyers. So one of them is something I call the tea practice, like the drink that you sip, the warm tea that you sip. So TEA stands for thought, emotion, action. It's a simple way to pause and notice, what am I thinking right now? What emotion is that thought creating in my body? And how is that emotion triggering my actions? I know it sounds simple, too simple, but practicing writing out your thoughts and seeing them on paper helps you see the cycle and how automatic it is, how often it's running in the background without you actually realizing it. And when you step back and see that, then you can actually interrupt the cycle and choose something different. The other core tool is my mindset matrix. It's a guided process that helps you surface those deeper beliefs that are running in the background that you don't even know about. These tools aren't about forcing yourself to think positively, like that toxic kind of positivity. It's not about reciting affirmations that you don't believe. This practice is grounded in neuroscience and emotional mastery, and they work because they meet you where you are. Even if you're running on empty, even if you think that it can't be changed, these tools give you a way to shift in small, real ways. Even though the shifts feel small in the moments, they add up to really big transformative changes for your life and your career. So for me, that meant going from constantly second guessing and criticizing myself to being able to give myself grace, compassion, and to trust my own judgment again. For my clients, it's meant no longer constantly thinking about work in the evenings or on the weekends. It's saying no without spiraling into guilt. It's sleeping through the night again. Or it's finally having the energy to be present with their kids and pay attention when they're talking to them. And here's the bigger point. When even one lawyer learns to practice differently, with presence or compassion, self-trust, it ripples. Colleagues notice. Families definitely notice. Teams shift. The culture starts to shift little by little. That's why I'm here. Because I know how different it feels when your body is no longer on high alert all the time. And I want every woman lawyer to know that that is possible, and that when they change, when they step out of that stress cycle, they become part of bigger change. So here's what I hope you know. This isn't just about you. The you are very important, and that even if it were just about you, that's enough. But it's also about the people around you. When you set a boundary or choose presence instead of perfectionism, you're showing associates, your clients, your kids, that there is another way to practice law. And the next generation of women who are just now entering this profession and wondering if it's possible to have a legal career without burning themselves out, you're showing them too. Law has always been shaped by precedent. And right now, you're writing a new one. You may not be able to change the entire system overnight, whether it's your workplace, the courts, or even the world outside your office. But you can change how you move through it. And those small shifts are what add up to bigger change. So let me remind you, you are not broken. The system is broken. And together, women lawyers are rewriting it. That is not selfish. That is leadership. And if you've ever thought, who am I to change this? I'll tell you, you are exactly who can change this. One decision, one shift, one boundary at a time. This podcast is here to give you tools, stories, and support so you can move out of survival mode and into a career that actually feels sustainable. You can also book a confidential stress reset call. It's a private, lawyer-to-lawyer space to talk honestly about what's causing your stress and your first step toward feeling calmer. It's not a sales pitch, it's a reset. You can book your call at heathermillscoaching.com/call. And here's the last thing. This podcast is one way we start changing the story of what it means to be a woman-in-law. And by listening, you are already part of that change. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I'll see you next week.